Dear students, welcome to the course of Fundamentals of Public Policy and Analysis. In this lecture, I will discuss two theories of public policies. There are various theories like elite theory, rational choice theory, incrementalism theory, institutionalism theory, public choice theory, and group theory. Here, we will discuss today two theories. One is group theory and other is public choice theory. Group theory was initially developed by Arthur Bentley in 1908. Later, it was expanded by David Truman in his book The Governmental Process in 1951. The central idea of this theory is public policy is the outcome of competing organized interest group in which government acts as a mediator in a pluralistic group driven process rather than an independent decision makers. So in this theory, the emphasis is given on the group conflicts, competitions, and sometimes even compromises and coalition to achieve the intended interest of individual groups. The theory provides a framework for understanding the complexities of policy making in a pluralistic societies. So, in a democratic system, society is pluralistic and there are various interest groups. So, how these interest groups interact each others, compete each other, conflict with each other, all these aspects are taken into consideration while developing the public policies. And in this theory, public policy is considered as a result of equilibrium and group struggle. So there may be group struggle and different groups compete with each others and they may arrive at consensus and equilibrium is established to decide the policy. There are key players in the policy making under this theory. First is interest groups, second is lobbyists, third political parties and government officials, and all are interact each others and government act as a mediator between the different interest groups and arrived at the consensus for the policy making. Interaction, competition and collaboration among groups are made to influence the policy outcome. Let me now tell you the key aspects of this theory. First and most important is interest groups. So let you know what do we mean by interest groups. According to Truman, interest group is a group of people with shared attitudes that make demands on other groups in the societies. Individuals with common interest form groups to influence decision making, and in this theory, individuals are significant in the politics only when they form the groups. Individual person does not have much stake in the policy making, but when they form the group, then jointly they can influence the policy making or government decision making. And policy is the product of extra group. So in brief, you can say that in this theory, the policy making is the result of group struggle. The theory argues that interaction and struggle among groups are the central facts of the political life, and equilibrium through the competition and struggle among organized interest group are the main aspect of this theory, and established through the struggle, competition and compromises among the different stakeholders or different interest groups. Politics is a pluralistic, group driven process, and it is driven by interaction among the groups. The main role of the government in this theory in making policy is to act as a mediator, balancing the competing demands of different groups rather than an independent policy makers. It means that the main role of the government is to understand the conflicts, competing demands, compromises, and try to balance among all these demands to arrive at the decision making. Legislature act like referee for the group struggles, ratifies the victories of the successful coalition, and record the surrenders, compromises, and conquest in the form of various statutes. Lobbying is one of the main features of this theory. Social lobbying shape the government decision, and these decisions are generally in favor of those groups which lobby the governments. Public policy at any given time reflect the interest of dominant group or groups. So this is also the important aspect, that although there may be various groups acting in the arena of policy making, but uh, the dominant group actually influence the decision making in their favor or in its favor, depending upon whether the dominant group is a single group or more than one group. So the dominant groups, they shape the policies and get the maximum benefit from the policy through dominating the entire process of policy making. A group dominance is, however, not static. It may change over a period of time, and the uh, the change in the dominance of different groups also alter the policy in favor of the interest of those groups who gain influence in the policy making against those who lose it. So, in this policy, the dominant groups may change over a period of time depending upon the situation. Sometimes one group may be more dominant, but after 5 years other groups may be more dominant in decision making, and due to this the gains and losses also occurs over a period of time to different groups. Dominant groups always get more gains through negotiating and influencing the decision making of the government. But in the whole process, one important aspect is that there may be some section of the society which may not be represented in these groups. So, unrepresented individuals may have either little voice or no voice in the decision making, and their interests are less likely to be served by the policy. So, this is one of the important lesson that can be learned from the group theory, that under represented unrepresented members of the society may get less benefit from the policy making if their voices are not heard in the policy making process. The theories focus on politics and policy making through interest and group struggle actually neglect many other factors such as ideas, rules, and institutions. They play a very important role in policy making, but in this theory, the emphasis is on group uh, and group dominance. So, therefore, many important aspects of policy making are neglected under this theory, particularly the ideas, rules, and institutions that plays an important role in the policy formulation and implementation. Policy reflect the equilibrium of competing groups influences determined by the relative influence of interest group. Policy shifts towards group gaining influence and away from the weaker. As I already told you that in different time periods, different groups may be more dominating and they get more benefits through the dominance and decision making in the policy arena. In this graph, you can see that there are two groups. One is in the left hand side, other is in the right hand side, group A and group B. And both the groups act in the arena of policy making. One group seems to be bigger or more dominating, especially group A in one time, and that may get more benefit. But if you look at the dotted line circle, this indicates that over a period of time, in group B may also be more dominating. So this and get maximum benefit. So when these two different groups act in the arena of policy making, they arrive at consensus and equilibrium is achieved, and after achieving the equilibrium, then the policy consensus is established, and the interest of both the groups are served through the policy making through negotiation, compromises, competition, and ultimately having some sort of consensus among the groups. Group influence depend on number of factors: organizational strength, leadership access to the decision making, and internal cohesion. So, what are the factors that actually uh, affect the dominance of a group in the policy making? Here you can see number matters. If a particular group is having more members, so that obviously in a democratic system have more dominance in terms of voting rights or electoral strength. But at the same times, the wealth is equally important. There may be another group which may be more richer, especially like industries, corporates, and they may have better organizational strength. So when there are conflicting groups, so they try to create dominance in the arena of policy making, and their dominance depend upon number of factors including their strength, wealth, organizational strength, leadership, access to the decision maker like politicians or bureaucrats, and also the internal cohesion. Forces maintaining equilibrium. What are the forces that try to establish the balancing relationship between the different groups? Here, there is a large latent group that support the institutional system and prevailing the rule of game. Overlapping group members helps to maintain the equilibrium by preventing anyone moving from the prevailing values. And third is checking and balancing resulting from the group competition also helps to maintain equilibrium in the system. So one important is the latent group, and that latent group actually may go either side depending upon the expected gains, and that also create decisive factors in policy making. Some groups may be overlapped, some members may be representing not only one group, may represent more than one group, and such members helps to maintain the equilibrium by preventing any one group from moving too far from the prevailing values. Similarly, checking and balancing may result from the group competition, and that also help to maintain the equilibrium in the system. So, this theory clearly state that the interest groups of different interest, different size, different attitudes, they act in the arena of public policies, and they put forward their own interests, and there may be conflict of interest, but ultimately due to the balancing factors they arrive at the consensus in policy making, uh, putting their own interests at the top priority. Mechanism of influence. Interest group influence policy through lobbying. Lobbying is an important features in this policy. By directly interacting with policymakers to shape the decision making, different interest groups lobbying with the government and try to seek the rent through lobbying, influencing the decision making of the governments, and try to change the policy in their favor. Provide campaign contribution to support candidate who represent their interest. Even in a democratic system, they create these different groups create campaign in favor of the candidates who support their interests and help them in formulating the policy that suit their interest. Group run public opinion campaign, they also create public opinion. Sometimes media, social media can also be used to influence both citizen and policymaker to mold the decision making in their favor. Form coalition with similar groups to strengthen their influence and resources. Coalition, in a democratic system, coalition government of sometimes of different interests of the political party come together to form the government, and such coalition also serve the interest of different interest groups, and sometimes there may be conflict, competition, but ultimately the balancing forces create equilibrium in the decision making. Groups also use litigation to shape policy through legal action and judicial decisions. Sometimes some groups may also approach the courts to raise a particular issue, especially the environmentalists. Sometimes they also put public interest litigation and try to change the policy in favor of environmental protection. Same things happen to any other groups which try to serve the interest of their members and raise some important issues that should be taken up by the public policy. Let me tell you few examples in Indian context where this group theory of public policy is relevant. First is agriculture policy. Government of India formulated agriculture policy, which is very comprehensive. We will discuss it later on. But let me take only one component of agriculture policy, that is MSP, minimum support price. So, in case of minimum support price, there are three key groups or stakeholders. One is farmers group. Farmers group will always put pressure on the government to raise the minimum support price of various agriculture commodities, but at the same time there are consumer groups. If price of agriculture commodity increases, then interest of the consumer groups will be badly affected. So that group will also put pressure on the government not to raise MSP beyond a certain limit. At the same times, governments is also have some implication of such kind of policies, because if higher MSP is increased, then it will be a more burden on the public exchequer or government budget. So therefore, in making the agriculture policy, the interest of all the groups are taken into consideration, but sometimes the dominant group may influence the decision making even in case of agriculture policy, uh, as per this theory. Similarly, environmental policy is another example, because there are mainly two main groups. One is producers, industries. They produce. When they produce, they release waste into the atmosphere and create negative externalities that harm the common citizens. So, citizen groups also have pressure on the government to formulate policy in such a manner that it regulate the functioning of the government, and the pollution that is generated or environmental degradation that is created by the corporate sectors or by the industries must be covered through raising more taxes or environmental cess on such kind of entities. Similarly, there are another policies like labor laws and labor reforms. In this case, we find that trade unions is a very important group, but at the same time there is a corporate sector, and they interact each others, collaborate and try to formulate the policy related to labor laws. So, always trade union wants higher wages, better work environment, higher social security provisions, but all these have some implication, cost implication on the industries. So, industry will also try uh, to influence the government so that their interest may also be served. Similarly, you can also know that government of India made a reform in the indirect taxation system. Now GST is being implemented, and in GST also there are various groups, state, interstate or center. So, all these groups play important role in deciding the decision making related to how much should be the tax rate and how much should go to the state and center in even in a divisible pool of such kind of taxes. So, you can say that there are many policies which have some idea related to group theory, but let me tell you that policy making is a very complex process. We cannot make policy solely relying on any specific theory. So, theories are formulated to understand how policy making is done, but policy making depend upon so many factors which cannot be easily captured by specific theory. Another example is in India, women's movement and civil society group influence planning, leading to women and development chapter in the sixth five-year plan. This is often cited that the women groups, they influence the government, and now the gender issue is very much captured in the budgets plan, and women welfare is giving top priorities in the planning and also in budget making. There are few criticisms of this policy. We can also discuss these criticisms. First is this theory overlook unequal power as wealthy and organized groups dominant policy decisions. So, this is one of the demerit. I already told you that in this theory, unrepresented groups may not have their voices in the policy making, and they may not get benefit due to dominance of some groups and unheard voices of marginalized groups, and therefore we cannot rely mainly on group dominance to make the policy. Second, it underestimates the role of institution and political leader in shaping the policy outcome. We also discuss that rules, institutions, they play important role in policy making, and not just group pressure leads to policy making, but rules, regulation, institutions, they also have the important role in making the policy. Politicians and bureaucrats, and sometimes even the elite theory, although elites is a small group which formulate the policy, and there may be some benefits they may get through this policy, but many times these elite theory also state that the policy making is formulated through elite theory in such a manner that maximum benefit is received by the society, or general welfare of the society may be taken care of through the elite theory. So elite theory is different in this regard from the group theory. This theory overemphasizes pluralism, ignoring the dominance of elite groups. I discussed this point. So these are some of the important criticisms of this theory. However, in practice, you can observe that the various groups act and pressurize the government to make the policy suited to their interest. You can cite many cases in India also. Sometimes consumer groups becomes more dominant and start raising their voices. Sometimes trade unions becomes more stronger, raising their voices to hike their wages and other perks and benefits. Sometimes farmers becomes very dominant to raise their voices, and sometimes due to in a democratic system the governments may also be influenced by such kind of interest group pressures. So let me now discuss another theory, that is public choice theory. This theory was developed by Buchanan and Gordon Tulloch in their book Calculus of Content in 1962. They are the main contributors to this theory, and Buchanan was awarded Nobel Prize in 1986. The public choice theory is the application of economics to the study of political science and government decision making. As a unique branch of economics, it developed from the study of taxation and public spending. So, let me briefly tell you that this public choice theory is based on the economic principles, that in economics we find that the individuals, industries, they try to maximize their own interest. Maximization is taught in microeconomics theories, and here the basic essence is that the resources at the disposal of either government or industries or household are limited, and these limited resources have competing uses, and therefore you cannot satisfy your all requirements with the limited resources, and you have to make choice, and therefore we have to find different alternatives. So out of different alternatives, one has to select the best alternative which maximize the self interest. So sometimes economics is called the science of choice. So why this problem occurs? Because we cannot produce all goods and services with the limited resources, we cannot consume all goods and services with the limited resources. So therefore we have to make choice, and choice is based on pure economic decision making, that is maximizing the self interest by using various uh, economic methods like optimization. Now, the same logic can be applied in case of politics. In politics, politician also try to maximize self interest, and he or she has to adopt various decision making in such a manner that his or her self interest is served. In this theory, public interest may be served, but emphasis is on self interest. So, therefore, this theory challenges the public interest theory, which hold that the decision making in democratic governments is motivated by self benevolence. What is the meaning? It means that the politicians, bureaucrats, governments are generous, they act for the benefit of the society and simultaneously also serve their own interests. So, main uh, aim of the bureaucrats, politicians or government is to maximize the social welfare. That is the main essence of public interest theory, but this theory is criticized by public choice theory, and according to this theory, politicians, bureaucrats, they act just like the individuals in their economic decision making. Public choice theory explain how government spending decisions often contradict the preference of general public. So, many decisions making by the government officials, politicians, they may not always serve the interest of the general public, or general public may not like some of the projects, but sometimes these projects, schemes or even policies are imposed on the general public, but the main interest of the politician or bureaucrats is to maximize their self interest. But maximization of self interest does not always mean to maximize the economic return. It may be maximization of vote. Sometimes in a democratic system, decision making is taken by the government in such a manner that they may influence the voting behavior of the general public and may win the next election. So, that is also a part of self interest. The self interest of the political party, individual politician is to maximize their vote or maximizing their all other self interest. This theory also opposes bureaucracy and criticizes its hierarchical administration, and therefore the policy applies economic principles to analyze people's actions in the commercial marketplace and to government officials' actions in collective decision making. So, like the consumer, the producers act in the market, in the same manner politicians, bureaucrats, they also act as a rational behavior or serving the self through various collective decision making processes. Economists who study behavior in the private marketplace assume that people are motivated mainly by self interest. In fact, Adam Smith economics is based on this principle that everybody is self interested and they maximize their own returns. Returns may be maximizing utility, returns may be maximizing production, or returns may be maximizing social welfare if it is government. While most people base at least some of their actions on concerns for others The dominant motive in the marketplace is the concern for their own interest. That is also true that we live in society, we are also influenced by fellow beings, and we also take care of our society members, but ultimately according to this theory the main motive is to serve own interest. Public choice economists operate at the same assumption as is operated in economics, that although people in the political arena have some concerns for others, because politicians, their main mandate is to help the citizens to maximize the return of different projects in terms of social welfare, but their main motive, whether they are voter, politician, lobbyist or bureaucrat, is self interest. Whether they are voters, politicians or lobbyists or bureaucrats, all these try to maximize their own self interest. So, main features of this theory are: this theory emphasizes individual decision making and assume that people act in self interest. Second, it applies economic analysis to study the politics and public administration. So, economic principles are applied in this theory to understand the politics and public administration and policy making. It supports institutional arrangement that promote competition in public delivery system. As I discussed earlier, economics assume self interest while political science assume public interest. But according to this theory, that political science, although assume politicians public interest, but this theory think that even politicians also try to get their self interest and not necessarily the public interest. It argues that all political actors seeks to maximize their personal benefits. These actors include voter, legislator, bureaucrats, parties and interest groups, all try to get their self interest rather than public interest. It is associated with economist Buchanan, and I told you earlier, and it views that politics as similar to marketplace. So, politics is just like market. Self interest individual can still achieve mutual benefits through collective decision making. Politics as mutual benefit and social contract. According to this theory, government arises from a social contract in which individuals agree to obey laws to protect life, liberty and property, and therefore this theory reflects the mutual benefits based on self interest. Role of government in this theory is correcting market failures. So, market failures occurs when the market is not working in a competitive environments, and there are three main reasons for market failure. One is market imperfection. In reality, market is not perfect competition, either it is monopoly or monopolistic competition or oligopoly. So, market imperfection. Second is information asymmetric, both customers and producers are not having complete access to the information. So, lack of information, market distortion occurs. And third is externalities. Externalities may be positive or negative. Negative externalities is an unintentional harm that is received by the person not directly involved in the activities. And here government provides public goods which are non-excludable and non-rival. Non-excludable means that everybody can consume such kind of public goods without paying anything. So, exclusion is not possible. Similarly, if one consumer is consuming a particular good, then the quantity of that good for other to consume will not reduce. That is the meaning of rival. Such goods are supplied collectively because individual cannot bear the full cost of these kind of public goods. Moreover, since these are the public goods, private players cannot create such kind of good unless some institutional mechanism in terms of revenue sharing PPP is created. So, it also address externalities which I already told you, and externality may be positive as well as negative. Positive externality example is like beekeeping and apple orchard, both will strengthen each other's benefits, while negative externality is the pollution generated by industries, and when these pollutions are consumed by the society, then it harms the society. People uh, go to the doctor to make treatment, so that is an external cost on them. Then public choice and politics is also important topic in this theory. Public choice theory explain how political decision making results in outcome that conflict with the preferences of public. For example, many projects are funded by the government every year despite not being the desire for overall electoral. So, what happens here, that some projects may not even be desirable by the society, but they are implemented. It means that uh, the politician may serve their own interest. The earmark project may be of interest to the politicians local constituency, increasing vote or campaign contribution, since they are spending the public money. So, they have little or no cost from their pocket. So, this is public money, so they have less concern as far as the cost is concerned. Buchanan has defined public choice theory as politics without romance. It means that the public choice theory dispels the wishful assumption that most participants in politics work to promote common goods, anything that benefit and is naturally shared by all members of the society. So, that presumption according to this theory does not hold true, that all politicians they try to make public welfare, rather they try to serve their own interest. In the public interest view, politicians and officials are portrayed as benevolent public servants who faithfully carry out the people's wish. But in the public choice theory, that does not assumed. In tending to the public businesses, voter, politicians, policymakers are assumed to be above their self-interest. However, these assumptions are not found in reality, especially in context of politicians. Economists do not deny that people carry about their families. Economists do not deny that the people care about their families, friends and communities. However, public choice like economic model of rational behavior assumes that people are guided by their self-interest, and people in the political process are no different. It means that politicians also are guided by their self-interest. Public choice simply transfer the rational actor model of economic theory to the area of politics. It assumes that politicians as a rational person who makes an optimum choice based on calculated expected benefit and is guided by the consistent personal values. Let me now explain this theory by a graph, how the public choice theory uh, can be studied in context of electoral politics. You can see here there are two parties, party A and party B, and on vertical axis we have number of voters, and it can be considered both side. And here parties try to influence the voters and in their favors. This is their self interest, but some voters may be ideologically associated with a particular party, and therefore they remain stick to party A if they are more ideologically aligned to party A. Similarly, some voters may be ideologically aligned to party B, so they may remain stick to the party B, but there may be a large chunk of voters who may be influenced by the expected benefits they may get from decision making by a particular political party that suits their interest. Therefore, the distance between the party A and party B, this is a huge or number of voters that can be influenced by public choice theory, and policy making can be made accordingly that serve the interest of a particular political party. And you can see that during the election time many political parties claim that they will provide this or that to the voters. So voters are also the self interested, so they try to get their self benefits and influenced by the claims or sometimes real benefit provided through policy to the specific group or specific member of the society, and they are influenced by the this, and that help the political party to win election. Let me now briefly criticize this policy making theory, that is public choice theory. Public choice theory makes human motivation too simple. So human behavior is so complex, you cannot just explain the human behavior only in terms of self interest. We live in the society, we are influenced by many other things, so it makes it too simple. It overstates rational behavior and ignore emotions and biases of the people. It assumes voters are ignoring limit in access to the information. It focuses on much on government failures. It exaggerates the role of interest groups and overlook the non-economic factors impacting the government performance. And finally, it has a small government biases. So let me now finally summarize these two theories through chart on the basis of various aspects. First is idea. In case of idea, group theory, the policy is the result of group struggle and equilibrium, while policy is the outcome of self-interested individual decision making in case of public choice theory. Key actors in case of group theory, interest group and pressure groups are the key actors which interact each others, compete each others, conflict each others, compromise, and also arrive at consensus. While in case of public choice theory, voters, politicians, bureaucrats and parties are the key stakeholders. Policy outcome, in case of group theory, policy reflects balancing of power among groups. So there are many groups, and main concern of the government is to balance the power of various groups by incorporating the interest of all the groups, but sometimes the most dominated group influence the decision making. While in case of public choice theory, policy reflects collective decisions of self-interested actors. Like in economics, we maximize our own interest. Role of the government in group theory, role of government is to manage conflicts and balances the group interest, while in public choice theory, government acts as a mechanism for mutual benefit and coordination. Mechanism of influence in the decision making. In case of group theory, lobbying, campaign, coalition and litigation are the main factors that influence the decision making, while in public choice theory, voting, incentives, bargaining, and institutional rules are the main influencing factors. As far as criticism of both the theories is concerned, group theory ignores unequal power and elite dominance, while public choice theory oversimplify the behavior and overstate rationality. So that's all in this lecture. Thank you very much.